Hi, my name's Andrew Twiddy. I'm here on the lands of the Pentlatch-speaking peoples, and I'm going to sing for us a psalm in Hebrew and then in English that brings in the mountains and the sun and the moon and the longing for safety in a time of uncertainty and an atmosphere of anxiety. It goes something like this. Esain el harim me'ain yavo ezri me'im Adonai ose shamayim v'aretz al yitin lamot raglecha al yanum shomrecha hine lo shanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilecha al yad yaminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka veyarech balayla. Adonai yishmocha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. I to the hills will lift mine eyes, from whence doth come mine aid. My safety cometh from the Lord, whom heaven and earth hath made. Thy foot he'll not let slide, nor will he slumber that thee keeps. Behold, he that keeps Israel, he slumbers not nor sleeps. The Lord thee keeps, the Lord thy shade on thy right hand shall stay. The moon by night shall not thee smite, nor yet the sun by day. The Lord shall keep thy soul, he shall preserve thee from all ill. Henceforth thy going out and in, God keep forever will. I first learned that psalm in Hebrew in the year 1979. Our teacher was a teacher who had learned it from Jacob Winegreen, who was the Hebrew professor at Trinity College, Dublin. That's not an Irish name, just in case you were wondering. You probably weren't wondering. But Jacob Winegreen wrote a grammar of the Hebrew language to introduce students who were unfamiliar to their basic approach to Hebrew writing and scripture and history. And so through him, his student, who was my professor, Robert P. Carroll, who wrote on Jeremiah and many other things, I did my first course in Hebrew in the Psalms. We studied the Psalms of Ascent and what we call the Royal Psalms, and in Christian tradition sometimes we call them the Messianic Psalms. So, the Psalms of Ascent are Psalms 120 through to, in the low 130s, through to 132. And so 121, Psalm 121 is the second of this section of the Psalter where the pilgrims going up to the temple in Jerusalem sing these songs of ascent. They're for going up. You're you're traveling thousands of feet up to the temple if you're down towards the Negev, the Dead Sea, or down below you come up to Jerusalem, to the temple, and you bring your voices, or even if you're nearby in Jerusalem, you're climbing hills to get up to the temple. So this psalm has all kinds of rich evocations for me. It's one of my first engagements with the Hebrew Psalter. And the tune I sang it in is something that comes out of my Scottish heritage as well, where I learned my Hebrew at the University of Glasgow. I entered there in 1977 and did a 5-year program in Hebrew. Hebrew, interestingly enough, has been in the University of Glasgow since the beginning. 1451, Pope Nicholas created a charter for Glasgow University, and within that, he said, we need to emphasize the training of the clergy. And so ever since 1451, there's been a commitment to the study of divinity, theology if you like, and the study of the languages of Scripture, Greek and Hebrew, are given particular promise. To the extent that in all of the Scottish universities, the first endowed chairs were all theological and language chairs. Admittedly, it did take till after the Union of the Crowns in 1707. In 1709, the chair of Hebrew and Semitic languages was created as a regious appointment. So for the last 300 and more years, it's the sovereign, the king or queen, who appoints the professor to the languages of Hebrew and other Semitic languages. So that's how I came to study that array of languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, Ugaritic, Akkadian, and so forth. So Psalm 121, of course, I was singing it there in the Scottish tradition. After 1451 and the creation of the University of Glasgow's charter and the devolving to the regents, or if you like, the board of the university, the responsibility for education of clergy and of these languages, the invention of the printing press was only 2 years later, 1453, Gutenberg, and suddenly the Bible became, over the next century, available in a way that was part of the sparking of the Reformation. And the culture in Scotland changed, of course, through that. One thing that didn't change, it only got stronger, was the presence of the Psalms in worship. So wherever you look, if you look at a typical church hymnary from the Church of Scotland, if you like, the state church of the country, the official religion of Scotland, the Presbyterian way, is that you can open the hymn book and the first section is the Psalter. And they're done in a metrical format, the kind that I sang in English, and then that also I reflected in the same tune in Hebrew. The significance of that is that whilst in England in the Reformation, Anglican chant became the dominant form of expression of the Psalms in singing them. We chant them on a single tone with 4-part harmony as well, so it makes the beautiful choirs and a lovely expression of the language. What happened in Scotland typically was the creation of metrical psalms, and that is, as you heard, a set meter, a common meter, a long meter, that had a tune composed around it that gathered its own mythology. So the song I sang is one that was written in 1591, and it goes under the name of either French or Dundee brackets French, because a lot of Scottish hymnody uses the name of places in Scotland to anchor the theme. And if you look at an old hymnary, you'll find if you open the first section, you'll get all 150 psalms converted into a paraphrase, something that rhymes and that fits a meter. And then above it, there's a split page, and you can choose from hundreds of tunes. They're all in alphabetical order, and the psalms are all in numerical order, and each one has got a hint and a selection. So the one that has most commonly been assigned to Psalm 121 is this tune French, or Dundee brackets French, which I sang to you. The memories that I have this in particular, and there's a reason I sang it without my guitar. I have the Kino David, David's lyre equivalent, but today I decided to sing without that, and that is because in Scotland the tradition of the precentor or the cantor, if you like, is that you sing unaccompanied, and one individual stands at the front of the congregation. So I'm going back to, say, 1983 on the Isle of Skye. It's Sunday, and of course, as the Christian Sabbath, what else do? You go to church. There's going to be nothing else open and nothing else to do. So Sunday evening, great, let's go to church. And I have this distinct memory of the presenter standing up, and I think it probably took about 40 minutes to get through the psalm, if you don't mind a little exaggeration. Hyperbole helps sometimes. But it went like this. I to the hills will lift mine eyes. That was about the speed anyway. Now, the beauty of that to me is you get a really long church service, but also you get a really meditative environment. You can actually savor each word. You're not rushing through it. You're going at this very gentle pace, as you would in the West Highlands, because in the Highlands things don't move quickly. You heard the story of Tam, who was waiting for the bus, and his friend Jock comes by and says, "Hey Tam, can I give you a lift home?" He says, "Oh, no, it's all right. The bus is coming in about 40 minutes. He says, "Oh, that's 40 minutes. So I said, "Yeah, but it'll not take me long to wait 40 minutes. And that's the atmosphere of the Highlands, that you've got this sense of being unhurried. The place where the concept of manyan or emanya seems a little hasty for them. But also that's reflected in the liturgy and the way the psalms are done, which are slow and long and very devout. Some people say dreich, or grey, drab, slow. Needs a bit more life, but others appreciate it for the dignity, the depth, and the beauty of it. So what I've done today is simply to take that ancient tradition in Scotland of appreciating the Psalter as the foundation of all worship. You see, so much of the Reformation in Scotland took over aspects of the Jewish liturgy. The Reformation sought to, first of all, recover the Word at the center of the service. So you see, the architecture of a typical Presbyterian parish is all ordered towards the pulpit and the Bible, just in the same way as you would be towards the Ark and the Torah scrolls in a synagogue. And it also became an aniconic tradition, because all of what were perceived at the time to be the excesses of ornamentation or worse still, the graven images of divine representation were put aside in favor of the Word, the assembly, and the Sabbath. The Christian Sabbath, of course, being Sunday, but that was a place of the cessation of other works so that there could be a focus on worship. And that's the society I grew up in. I had 11 years in England, so I got to imbibe the Anglican way and the Methodist way, and other ways, in fact, there, but the culture of England. And then I had the next 12 years in Scotland, so I got to live my high school and teenage and university years out in Scotland, so I could experience and compare and put together this blend of different traditions. And through that, through my father's inspiration, I think, he was the one who showed me his 1951 Hebrew Bible from the Bible Society, and he said, "Whoa, this is difficult stuff." So he got a postcard and he cut out a little one-line space. He said, my eyes just blur if I look at it, so I can only read one line at a time. Kind of the equivalent of the yad in the synagogue, where he put his postcard over the text so that it was, okay, one line at a time, I can just about make it. Anyway, I think he never actually suggested I study Hebrew or Greek, but I think he hoped I might. And sure enough, I took the bait, if that's what it was. And I felt privileged to be part of that ancient 526-year-old tradition of the Hebrew and Greek languages that I entered into at the University of Glasgow. So these are the things that shape and inform me, and as we experience those ancient, thousands of years old longings for safety and security, those interactions with the divine where we seek protection. We know that the sun can damage us. We know that under the cover of darkness things can go wrong at night. We know that the mountains represent strength, but are they enough for us? We need strength of a greater kind in times of fear. So my hope is that over coming months and years I'll be able to experience and share more of these types of psalms in that flow back and forth between the Hebrew, which would be the hymn book of Jesus, if you like, at least the very liturgical language of it. His natural language would have been the Western Galilean accent and Aramaic language, and yet in the synagogue when he came, as we read of it in our canonical scriptures, he came in, Reb Joshua, if you like, to unroll the scroll and start to read. He would be reading either the Hebrew text or the Aramaic interpretation of it, but I think most likely what he would know and memorize and experience would be the Hebrew first and the Aramaic second. I'm wandering outside of my remit in talking in those ways, but I think what I would hope in this interfaith world, an interconnected world, multi-spiritual world, where we want to honor so many traditions and honor the commonalities and the diversities, that we can find ways to honor each other's traditions by entering into them, and also honor each other's traditions by learning from one another and knowing where that flow fits, the back and the forth of it. So I look forward to other occasions where we can choose some other psalms to sing, and thanks for being with me today.